Hey, it's Jamie. I hope you're doing good out there. Happy New Year. My life has just been crazy. It's been about 6 or 7 months since I made my last video. I just rolled off a project that I had to quit, unfortunately, because I don't think it was going to be successful with me in the position I was in. And so I want to talk to you a little bit today about some of the things to look out for when you're on a software project, especially maybe if you're a consultant or you're a little bit further along in your software development career, maybe you're 5 to 10 years into it or more. And maybe some of this story will help you avoid some of the things I've run into so that you can be more successful on your project. So about 2 years ago, I met somebody here in town that had just moved to Austin from California, and they had a lot of connections in the industry. And they asked me to go out to coffee with them. And so I met them at a coffee shop nearby, and we talked a little bit about our careers. And at that time, he was looking for somebody to come in and help him with a consulting project. And I just wasn't interested in the type of work specifically on that project, but I kept in touch with him, and he actually helped me find one of my first projects when I went on my own. I've talked about that with you before. But this project that I just quit, he also helped me find. And let me talk a little bit about the political environment of the software project, because I think it parallels a lot of other projects I've been on, and maybe it'll help you. So there was a company that wanted to build a new software product, and they went out to a vendor they found, and they worked with them for about 9 months. And at the end of that 9 months, they fired this vendor because they honestly just weren't delivering. And so this client kind of went out and they started talking to different people, and they were trying to figure out, who should we go with? Who can do a better job than this vendor that we've went with before? And this brings up one of the things that I think I run into, and you probably have many times on software projects, is it's going to vary a lot when you work for a client or a boss in software development, somebody who's never built the specific product you're building, or maybe they're not even a software developer. You have to kind of figure out, like, how mature are they at software development? And a lot of projects I get into, the people paying for the product don't really know anything about software development. They've used apps, they maybe have built a website, maybe they've done a lot of software development before, but they've never really worked on a multi-person team to build like a big product like we probably have before. So this client, unfortunately, when they fired the other vendor, now they're looking for a new vendor, and they're looking for more certainty. They want somebody that can tell them exactly how long things are going to take. They want somebody who can meet deadlines, because think about it, they're nervous. They just got burned. They want somebody that can show them progress. Add on top of this the fact that the prior vendor had used quote unquote agile with them before. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I think agile software development is a great thing, but it's being abused in our industry right now. I just saw actually a little short video clip from Joshua Karyevsky where he was talking about how the Department of Defense now has even issued a white paper to help people look out for fake agile. I want to read it. I haven't read it yet. I don't know if I'm going to agree with what's in it or not. But, one of the problems with this project when it first started was this client that had been burned by this other vendor, they were out shopping around, and they finally found the company that hired me. And it was actually 2 consulting companies to help this client. One was a company that was really good with mobile development, and the other was a company that was really good with back-end development. Think of APIs and things like that. So already you've got a kind of politically sensitive situation. You've got a client that's been burned before. They just hired us. There's really us as 2 parties. You've got one company that's able to develop the back end and one that's able to develop the front end. So one of the first problems I think that I was brought in to solve was to help them figure out how much work is left to rescue this project. And, I'm of the opinion that when you're brought in to do this, and I've been brought in to do this many times, it is impossible to know all the problems in a code base that's been built by somebody else without actually getting in there and starting to do work on it. So, we did the best we could. There were, mobile experts, back-end experts, me, a whole bunch of other people that went in there and looked at the solution. And we found some huge problems right out the gates. One was this prior vendor that the client had went with had suggested that they use a microservices architecture. And this was for a product that was an MVP. There's no market for it yet. They have a whole bunch of potential customers, the client does, and they have some interesting relationships where they're able to get customers quicker than most people. And I think that gave them a false sense of security that, look, we can build our product, we know more about our market, we can build more before we release it to them because we really know our customer. And this is one of the biggest things that I'm always talking with you about, which is that I think, and I've experienced this myself when I had a couple startups. When we start a software product or a software company, we bring our own biases into it, and I usually bring into a software project like this one that I was just on, I bring on biases or limiting beliefs that I think most people don't really understand. Agile, for instance. And so, when I came onto this project, I kind of was brought on just to look at what kind of work there was to do, but I also had my, antennas up kind of going, what do people think Agile is here? And it was pretty quick that I realized most of the management at this company that I was working for, I think they really understood the buzzwords, user stories, sprints. They'd done it maybe on a project or two before, but philosophically, the concept of Agile that you need to release just a little tiny piece of your vision to your customer, not your full product, and iterate on it. I don't think that the company I was working for either really understood that or just the way the contract was that they wrote with this client that had been burned allowed them to do it. So, the longer I was on this project, I had to kind of ignore some of the problems I saw for a while because, I'm new there. They don't know me. They don't trust me. I was brought in somewhat as an expert on the project, but even when you're brought in as an expert, in fact, my experience is even more so when you're brought on as an expert, people expect that you're going to know everything. You're going to be able to predict everything. You're going to be able to, tell them exactly how long things are going to take. And that's just not possible, especially this product that had been built over 9 months with 30 different developers, rolling on and off the project. So if you think about a product that's been built with 30 people over 9 months, what are the chances that you're going to, as someone like me or a couple other people, are going to dig into a code base that extensive and find all the problems? You're not. So, a couple problems we found right away. I told you about one of them before, which is they suggested that they use a microservices architecture. And for this product, it just didn't make sense. The other problem was they built native apps for all these different platforms. So they had an iPhone app, an Android app, an Angular website, an ASP.NET website. They had all of these different technologies. So it was kind of like they already had the technical debt, so to speak, of a fully shippable product that's making money in production, but nothing's even shipped yet. So one of the first things that I had to help with was when a developer on the back-end team was going to work on the code and they would make a change to their code and hit play to build the code and test it, it took 8 minutes from the time the compile of the code finished while the debugger was kind of spinning up to start it. And we realized this is because the microservices sort of framework that the services were running in was a ton of overhead, and it was just unnecessary for this product, and it was killing the back-end team. So we were in this difficult situation where we had all this pressure from the client. We need you to finish this project. We need you to get it done. But we also had serious technical problems with the architecture. So, I had a bunch of conversations with the client, and so did, the consulting firms I was helping. And we finally got the client to realize, look, we have to make some major architectural changes to allow the team to even make changes to this code quick enough to try to hit any of these deadlines. They had all these deadlines in their head of, we want to go live with this many customers at this date and this many customers at this date. But the company, as I talked about in other videos, they weren't really mature with software development, so they really had no idea if those were even reasonable dates. So as the project was going on, it became more and more apparent that in addition to this microservices problem, the prior vendor had kind of sold the client on, we know how to do DevOps. And when I got in there and looked at how they were doing their deployments and their releases, it was a mess. I mean, it almost looked like, let's say you're going to go, somebody's going to drive you down the street to get a sandwich, and you get in their car and it's just a complete mess. Like there's nowhere even to sit. There's garbage everywhere. That's what this this client's product, their automated deployment, unfortunately looked like. So, here I'm this new person. I'm trying to earn trust with just these two consulting companies, and in turn earn trust with this client. And what they want to hear is, we'll get your product done in 6 months. We'll get your product done in 2 months. But what we had to tell them instead was, we can't even tell you yet how long it's going to take to do this because we have to do more discovery. And so we did. And the client was really, they were frustrated at first, but they were pretty gracious with us. And so we spent some more time and some more of their money and did some more discovery, and it was really valuable. We found a whole bunch of other problems. There were branches that were left open for a super long time, all kinds of stuff. So as this project kept going on, I became more and more of sort of the go-to person on the automated deployment and DevOps kind of technologies, just because I was the only one that kind of knew how to use them. However, many of the things I've talked to you about in DevOps related videos about getting developers and operations people to work together closer, I don't think culturally these two consulting companies I was helping, they really understood anything about that. And I think the developers too that worked for these two consulting companies, they knew DevOps was related to automated deployment, and they'd kick the tires a little bit, and they knew some Azure, but as far as understanding like the whole concept behind DevOps, I don't think they understood it at all. There were several things that happened on the project where things kind of got out of sync because people were making changes kind of contrary to what I had told them the way that they should do it. And I didn't get angry at them or anything. I just kind of explained it to them. But there was a lot of resistance and a lot of frustration and a lot of like, well, why can't I just log into the dev server and just make a bunch of changes? Why are you telling me you have to make them? Or why are you telling me I have to script them? On this project, I was originally brought in just to help with C# code and kind of architecture and looking at the solution. But as it went forward, I got more intimate with the mobile apps, and I got more intimate with their security solution, and I got more intimate with their DevOps, to the point where I kind of learned a pretty good amount about everything. And it got to a point where, much like I've talked to you about in my video on leading software developers, I began to have a really hard time setting boundaries for myself, meaning like people every day were asking me like 10 new things to do when I was already on the hook for other things. And I had to keep telling them, no, I'm sorry, or I'll get to that eventually. And it got to a point where I started to have conversations with the management and let them know, look, the workload that I'm getting right now, I don't have much throughput to actually get tasks done. So I need basically my position to change where I can kind of help oversee some of this stuff, or I need to basically have something stated that like, I'm not going to be working on all this other higher level stuff. I'm only going to be focused on one part of the project. So I started bringing that up, and everybody on the project was like, yeah, that makes sense. You understand the project, all the pieces, maybe it would make more sense. But when it really got down to it, the back end team really needed help, and I was able to help. And so I got into a situation where I was helping the mobile team, the back end team, helping the client understand issues, getting on calls where the client's kind of freaking out and helping calm them down a little bit. But I really realized after driving around, I was with my wife, we were in the parking lot of Home Depot, that there were two problems on the project that I just didn't feel like there was anything I was going to be able to do to fix. And once I realized those, and they were personal problems, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but it was just really relationship type things. Mostly, there was one gentleman on one of the teams at the consulting company that just, there was some friction in the relationship. I think we both respected each other, but it became increasingly difficult to work together. And the other thing was that I feel like at this client, culturally, though their CTO was very experienced with software development, maybe not so much mobile development as much, culturally as a company, this is a company where their leadership had been successful with startups before, met multiple startups, so they look at it like, hey, this is just another startup. But this was their first startup really in this sophisticated kind of a product, software product kind of space. So they're very immature there. And I think the combination of the toxicity at the client because of their immaturity, and they'd really blame each other a lot, and there was a lot of mistakes happening and people pointing fingers and not really working together as a team really well. And then the consulting companies I was working for, though they meant well, I think just some of them are probably watching this. I want to be fair and honest here. I'm not trying to, pull the wool over anyone's eyes or sell any of this short, but I think I just got to a point where I realized what I bring to a software project, I wasn't going to be able to bring much of that on that project anymore. And so I let them know it was time for me to move on. And it was hard because I really liked pretty much every person I met on that project. I was telling my wife one of the things I think I did actually pretty well on this project was, and I've talked about this with you before, is when I went in there, I explicitly told myself, there's a large team here. If I'm going to be successful, I need to get to know everybody and really get to know them. This was a remote project, so it was all over Slack. But I tried to do calls with people whenever possible. I offered help for people whenever possible. I really just tried to be a supportive leader. I think I've talked to you before about how the best leaders I've worked with in software development, they're not do this, do that. They're not, bosses. They sit with you, they work with you, they empathize with you. They're part of the team they're leading. And so that worked out great. I mean, I made quite a few friends on that project, and I made a great bill rate, and it was a lot of really good experience. But the main thing that I wanted to share with you today was just that if you're on a software project and you're at a point where you've done some great work, and you've invested a lot of your time, and I had at this point 6 to 7 months on this project. I mean, I'd done a lot of overtime, but I got to this point where, and you might be, I started making unhealthy lifestyle decisions. I started drinking more coffee to try to keep up with the increased stress and workload. My sleep started to suffer. I started to get a little bit edgy towards the end of the project because if you've been on a death spiral type project or a project where there's some contention, the pressure cooker gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And in that last probably month and a half, 2 months I was on the project, though everybody was gracious, they really appreciated my help. They tried to work with me, to help me get out and kind of transition off the project. The kind of problems I was seeing on that project from really the beginning were only getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And so, I had to kind of make a decision for myself. Is there anything wrong with me quitting this project? Am I kind of, in a sense, screwing over this client? And I really got to a point where I realized, no, I had done a ton to help them. Their automated deployment continuous delivery environment I rewrote the whole thing. It's way better. I wrote all these wiki topics for them when I rolled off to try to help them out. I mean, you can never do a perfect transition, right, when you roll off. But if you're on a project yourself and you get into this situation, you become indispensable, but it's to a point where the rest of the team isn't supporting you enough. Your workload's too big. You've had conversations with people. They're not taking you seriously. And that was part of what was happening was the management, I'd been talking to them about it. I think they knew there was a problem, but nobody really, really wanted to act on it. And this has been a problem that I'm going to continue to share with you on these videos because I'm working on it, which is how to instill a sense of urgency in people to take action on things that they don't want to because they don't really think they're a big deal, but that will really make my life as a programmer much harder if I don't get these changes made. That's what this whole channel's about, right? This whole channel's about how can you be a healthy software developer. And when I talk about a healthy software developer, I'm not just talking about somebody who eats well, sleeps well, your lifestyle's good. That's some of what this channel's about. I think the bigger thing is having a healthy mindset when you go into a software project, and also just having a healthy career mindset that you're going to go from project to project to project. You're going to run into problems. That doesn't define you. That doesn't make you a failure. So that's it. I just wanted to give you a quick update on what's been going on with me so I can kind of get back to starting these videos again. I'm going to try to do them more frequently, but just more off the cuff so that I don't have to spend as much time editing. But as always, leave me some comments below. Let me know, how your projects are going or if you have any feedback on how mine went or how I could have done better. And as always, you can always listen to this as a podcast on many podcast platforms, and please subscribe if you're new here. Talk to you soon. Thanks.